After a narrow 1-0 defeat at home, Arsenal will be looking to turn things around back in Paris against PSG. Harry, you were there as the resident Arsenal fan. I'll come to you first. What's your biggest takeaway from the game? I've talked to a few Arsenal fans. They're a bit disappointed about the performance.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that against a team of that quality, you have to keep your shape. And Arsenal didn't do that for me in the first 20, 25 minutes of the game. They were being pulled from pillar to post, which I think PSG can do to pretty much anybody because they're that good a side. But if you lose your structure, if you go searching, if you try to be the aggressor against them, then you're going to really struggle. And I felt that Arsenal would go into this tie with a little bit more of a pragmatic approach, having looked at what PSG had done to some of the English opposition previously. That wasn't to be the case. I do wonder if Arsenal were kind of surfing on the wave of what they did to Real Madrid at the Emirates Stadium a little bit, and that created this desire and maybe a bit of an illusion that what they needed to do in this game was to go out and blow PSG away in the same way. It was never going to happen. So I'm glad Arsenal adjusted it. I'm glad they fixed it and they managed to stay in the game. But there were parts of the game late on, Kweku, where I'm looking at it and I'm going, what are you doing? Just let the game play out as it is. Get through this 1-0 and go again. Because I felt in our desire to go and chase that equaliser at times, we were taking unnecessary risks. We were taking quick free kicks when we weren't set, taking quick throw-ins when we weren't set. And the risk that brings against a team of this quality, for me, wasn't worth it. So we go again with Thomas Partey back, and hopefully that makes a difference.
Tony, PSG, I don't think in the English media are getting enough credit for how good they were. Obviously, they've come to England, they've beaten Liverpool. They come to England, they got through against Aston Villa. How good were PSG in the game and compare that to how poor Arsenal were in the game?
Well, I think it's more of how good PSG were. I think the first 30 minutes just kind of alluded to how good this PSG side is. We've always seen PSG have these star-studded players with your Messis, your Mbappés, your Neymars. But now it's Vitinha, Fabio Ruiz, João Neves. These players are just so cohesive, and that midfield is just so great. And it's just the way they just get on the ball. And every single midfielder just wants to play football. And that's the big thing with Luis Enrique. He wants every position to be a good footballer. And you know, that's the reason Manuel Ugarte is not there and he's gone off to United. But you can see the difference in that every person in PSG can play football. So it's going to be a really hard one for Arsenal. And Arsenal weren't that bad. As you said, I think they were riding off the wave of Real Madrid, but they just had to up it another level against this PSG side because I think it's the second best team in the Champions League.
I would agree with you in terms of how good PSG were. And you compare it to their previous sides. And of course, Verratti was a great midfielder and they had incredible attackers, but they seem like a more cohesive side. And for me, Luis Enrique deserves so much credit for it. He's such a good manager and he's kind of found his team at PSG and they're a way more likeable PSG team. And for me, going into this game, the matchup was always going to be in midfield. I've said it multiple times. I love the composition of Rice, Partey, Odegaard. But with Partey being suspended for that first leg, you saw the difference. And PSG, it's a completely different style of midfield, but they've just got ballers and they can retain possession. And for the first 20 minutes, Arsenal couldn't get close to them. And it looked worrying, right? If PSG were a bit more clinical in front of goal, they could have been out of sight at the Emirates. But Arsenal did well to get back into the game. And I feel like it only being 1-0, and if Arsenal go and look at what Liverpool did, they nicked it in the Parc des Princes. But Arsenal should go into the second leg with a lot of optimism, right? We've seen Arsenal go to the Bernabeu, the home of the European champions, and get a win. It wasn't a case of they just got through. They got a win in that game. So from your point of view, Harry, do you have that confidence of having done it against Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, heading into the match in Paris?
You got to believe that they can do it. Otherwise, what's the point in turning up?
Yeah.
Like, you got to go there with that belief. I think the encouraging thing for me is that Arsenal learnt from the first 25, 30 minutes. They obviously figured out there was an issue. Mikel Arteta talked about it, didn't he, in his press conference? He wouldn't go into detail with regards to what exactly that was, but he mentioned a tweak that he felt then got the team back into the game and just swung the pendulum a little bit into a kind of more central position. I'm not going to say in Arsenal's favour. It was kind of a more central situation. But I think you got to believe that you can do it. Partey coming back is massive. We touched on it already, but he just brings a balance to the Arsenal midfield. And while we're kind of waxing lyrical about PSG, I think it's important to make that point about balance. That's what they have that, in my opinion, no other side in this competition has. I think they're the best. I think they've got that really nice balance between being able to say to Doué, Dembele and Kvaratskhelia, go and do what you want, express yourselves, be those kind of maverick type players. But they've also got them to be able to flick a switch and go into this aggressive press. I've never seen Arsenal struggle to play through a press as much as they did in that first half an hour against PSG. Arsenal were relying on David Raya to create for them because he was the only player that didn't have a PSG player sort of right under his nose every time he got the ball. So for me, they've got a lovely balance, but you've got to believe Arsenal can do it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, I agree. And going into that second leg in Paris, obviously we know how vocal PSG fans are. It's not going to be an easy game for Arsenal. But from a tactical point of view, do you think Arsenal should go for it, gun-ho, or do you think Arsenal should play how they have traditionally played in the Champions League, be opportunistic and kind of assess the game in the first 20 minutes and then go for it from there?
If this was at the Emirates, I would say go for it, because we've seen Aston Villa go for it at Villa Park, and you saw Villa Park be the 12th man, and they ultimately beat PSG, even though PSG went through. Unfortunately, it's at the Parc des Princes. Yeah. That's the issue. I think going for it at the Parc des Princes is only going to lead to one favour, and that's going to be to Arsenal loss. I think Arsenal should be opportunistic, be good at what you're good at, which is being pragmatic, defending. And if you're going to win this game, Arsenal, if Arsenal get to the Champions League final through a penalty shootout, no one's going to remember it. Yeah, it's not going to be, even if they win 2-0, it will be much better. But just get through, because I think going to PSG and trying to play football against PSG is just not going to work. You saw Liverpool. Liverpool are a good team. They're the best team in England right now. They didn't go play football at the Parc des Princes. Yeah. Alisson had the best game of his life, and that was it. And that's how they got their 3 points. So I think if you're going to try and get to the final, that's the way you got to go do it.
And also, lots has been made of the kind of atmosphere at the Emirates Stadium, and you mentioned the atmosphere at the Parc des Princes. The atmosphere is dependent on what happens on the pitch.
That's true.
Yeah. It's so dependent on what happens on the pitch. You know, people keep referencing the Real Madrid game and how special it was that night. Well, that's because Declan Rice stuck 2 absolute banger free kicks into the back of the net and set everybody off. Okay, the atmosphere was good before that, but that took it to a whole new level. The atmosphere at the Emirates, it wasn't flat the other night, but it was nervy. And that was a consequence of A, conceding really early on in the game, and B, then watching your team struggle for half an hour. That sort of flatness, if you want to call it that, I know some people are calling it that, I think it was a nervousness, that built over time. Because for half an hour, Arsenal couldn't get anywhere near them. They were chasing shadows, they were being pulled out of shape, they were really, really struggling. If you go to the Parc des Princes and you start well, then the atmosphere is very, very different. I saw it at the Bernabeu, you know. Arsenal missed a penalty, and it went up a few notches at the Bernabeu. Then Real Madrid got awarded a penalty. Then it got overturned, and the atmosphere went like that. And then when Bukayo Saka scored, there was no atmosphere anymore. Yeah. So what happens on the pitch plays a big part there. So yes, it's an intimidating place to go, and you got to be on point with that. But I think if Arsenal play their game and suffocate PSG in the way that we know they can, if they get things right and tweak things, then I think they'll be okay.
Talk to me about Martin Odegaard, because I've been on record saying that, barring any Chelsea player, he's my favourite player in football to watch. I just think at his best, he's incredible. In the first season that you challenged for the title a few seasons ago, he was absolutely amazing. This season he's come under criticism. I know that he's missed a portion of the season due to injury, but the game against PSG in the first half and the whole performance just wasn't good enough. And he's been singled out by a lot of people as part of the reason why Arsenal struggle so much. Why is it that Odegaard is struggling recently?
He's not at it at the moment. There's no getting away from that. And I've tried to defend him a lot in recent months, because I think players do go through difficult periods. And I think as supporters, you got to stick with them, particularly when they got the credit in the bank that Martin Odegaard has. He's been our best player for the last 2 years. And yes, he's struggling a bit at the minute, but you know, I don't think people should be ready to turn their backs on him. I've seen some articles written, even from some of the respectable outlets, saying he should be stripped of the captaincy and it should be given to Declan Rice. And Declan Rice is great, but that's a ridiculous narrative to peddle at this stage. But it's undeniable that he's not playing very well at the moment. He's not impacting the game in the final third in the way that we know he can. The final pass isn't there. It's maybe a bit of a lack of confidence, because it feels like he's taking extra touches sometimes. There's a lot of work rate still and a lot of effort. He twists and he turns and he closes people down, but it's not really happening for him at the moment. But the biggest worry for me the other night was that it felt like the leadership quality had just faded away a little bit. Yeah. Normally I look at him and I go, right, you're not doing it on the ball today, but you are the guy that's leading our press. You're the guy that's making sure we get up, making sure we tuck back in when we need to. And against PSG, where I've referenced that they were pulling us right and left, I never felt that Martin Odegaard, as the captain, got hold of it and went, stop going out there and chasing. Yeah. It felt like it needed to come from the sidelines, when that was a problem that should have been solved on the pitch. Yeah. So that's probably the first time I've come away genuinely worried about him.
People have been talking about Martin Odegaard, but in terms of a person who did perform on the night, Ousmane Dembele, a man that has come under criticism in previous seasons, been inconsistent. We saw when he first burst onto the scene, people were saying, is he better than Mbappe? But this season has really showed the player that we expected him to develop into. Got the goal for PSG early doors, was a very good goal as well. How good is Ousmane Dembele? And when we talk about Ballon d'Or, should he be in that conversation?
I think for this season, definitely he should be in this conversation. I'm not saying he's the front runner, but I feel like this is the season we've been waiting for Ousmane Dembele. I remember the times at Dortmund when it was a debate with Monaco and Mbappe and Ousmane Dembele, who's the better player. Obviously, Mbappe went on to go do what Mbappe does, and Dembele's here now. So it's taken him a long time, and he's only, 26, 27.
Yeah.
So this is fine for a player to peak. Getting into his peak right now, this is good. Whether he's the Ballon d'Or contender, you've got a couple guys over in Barcelona that we might mention on later, but you've got those, so maybe not, but I'm really happy for Ousmane Dembele. It's weird that we thought being in the centre, this would be the position that he could establish himself for. We all thought he could play off the left or the right, being both-footed, but really as a number 9, he's established himself. It's just whether he can do this for a multitude of seasons in his career on this trajectory, but we'll see.
It's a huge game in Paris, a massive game. You going to be there?
I am. I'm hoping Dembele doesn't make it, as horrible as that sounds. He did pick up an injury, so he is a doubt going into the second game, at least at the time of recording. So from a purely selfish point, I'd quite like to see him sidelined. But just on Dembele, the fact that he's able to play this kind of really fluid role, it's worked a treat for him.
Yeah.
He can go left, he can go right, he can drop deep. And there isn't that restriction in terms of his position. I did feel in the past when he was playing on one flank, you could do a number on him. You could put a fullback there, get the winger to come back and support, bring your maybe inside midfielder to come over and support as well, and you could shut him out. You can't do that right now because you can't keep track of him. There were times in the game where he was going back to halfway and William Saliba was going with him because he was so desperate to keep a hold of him. But that opens doors for others. So, yeah, you say it. Big game coming up next week, and fingers crossed Arsenal can turn it around.
Harry, need a prediction. PSG Arsenal. The game is on a knife edge. It's so finely balanced. How do you reckon it goes?
I've said ever since the first leg finish, I've said I'm going to predict this with my head rather than my heart because I want to be mentally prepared for a potential disappointment. I'm hoping the guys can do it, but my prediction for the second leg is a 1-1 draw, in which case Arsenal would fall short.
I weren't expecting that from you. I weren't expecting it, Tony.
I'm tempering my expectations. I don't want to be heartbroken again.
That's definitely head over heart. He thinks Arsenal going through, really.
He does. You want to say it.
What about you? How do you reckon it goes?
I'm going head over heart, especially as well as I'm not an Arsenal fan, but I'm going to go 2-1. I feel, you know what? 3-1. 3-1 to PSG.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going to go 3-1, I think it's going to be so close at 2-1 and then 3-1 just to consolation and make it over and done with.
I think it's going to be so tight. I think this game goes to extra time. I'm saying 2-1 Arsenal in normal time, and I think PSG just managed to do it in extra time. But guys, let us know what you think down in the comments below. PSG versus Arsenal, second leg Champions League. Doesn't get much bigger than this. Let us know how you think the game's going to go.